larger expanses of time, do you find it easier, not just now, but maybe in general, to create when you have a large expanse of time, or do you kind of need the urgency of a deadline to be more, to write and to be more creative? So Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
I think that it's both for me. Like I have to have an expansive time to like let my mind roam and do menial tasks and things that can kind of like bring in the thoughts and the nuggets. And then it helps me to have a deadline to sit down and actually do something with them and do the sort of structural part and the editing part. So, for me, like both those things, because I feel like I kind of do it, like a dual way. I have those two things that have to happen.
Lydia, how about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think so much of my songwriting process is doing nothing and or looking like I'm doing nothing, but thinking a lot. But as far as like actually nailing something down, I haven't been very concerned with that recently, which kind of sucks. But I feel like the scads of time that I have are not going to songwriting, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you write well under deadline in general, or does that kind of place more pressure on you?
It's a little of both. I mean, I think I need a deadline. It definitely can be stressful, but I can usually get something done with a deadline as opposed to like, I have all the time in the world,
Yeah.
But I also, I'm kind of a slow writer as it is,
Do you think, and Elizabeth, I'll ask you this question, then go back to Lydia, but Elizabeth, do you think it's important? Do you write every day, whether it's songwriting, journaling, any type of writing?
Not maybe that writing in the most literal sense of the word, but I feel like people that write from their life are always writing. I'm never not writing because I'm at least on I'm always on input if I'm not on output. So I'm always collecting words, phrases, foods, just scents, smells, feelings, and so just like going through life, I'm just always collecting these moments, and so that's the input part. And if writers and creative people, I think, at least for me, I'm never not writing. Just because I don't have pen to paper doesn't mean I'm not writing. I'm then collecting things to write about.
So that's a good point, because when I was a professor, I told my students the writing process is always taking place. It's taking place when you're eating, when you're sleeping, when you're working out, when you're walking, when you're swimming, doing anything like that. And I think if you think of it that way, the process becomes less daunting, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I used to associate guilt with not actually doing what I thought this very like rigid idea of writing was.
Yeah.
And I had to let go of that. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of time, is the guilt over not writing. Like, fuck that,
How did you get rid of that guilt? Was it like, fine, what's going to do it differently, or what?
I mean, it just occurred to me that the best, as my writings evolved, that the best songs come from things that I'm picking up. And the more time and space I give myself to collect those things, the more interesting perspective and vantage point I have to write from. So it's super valuable. It's I don't know, it's like sort of the nucleus of it. So I disassociated any kind of guilt with that, and like that, oh, I'm not like, sitting at my desk, 8 hours a day with my guitar and, putting together songs. I mean, that is one approach, and I'm sure it works for a lot of people. I don't want to work in a coal mine. I want to be attached to something bigger, and so I don't know. That's what I think about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I imagine it places less pressure on you, right? If you just know that process is taking place.
Yeah,
like
I do that later. I do that later, where I like lie to people and tell them I have enough songs to make an album, and I totally don't. And then the session gets booked, and then I'm like, D-Day. And I
Gotta
totally
do
did
it.
that on this last
Yeah.
record. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Lydia, how about you? Do you, I'm sure we talked about this last time, but do you write in some fashion every day, or is that not important?
Yeah, I mean, probably because I pretty religiously journal. It's not
Yeah.
always this is what I did today. A lot of it is like, I feel like shit. I hate myself. It's a lot of feelings, less like it's nothing that's gonna give me an alibi ever, because I don't really know if I ever write anything detailed. But yeah, I mean, I journal a lot. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree that like when you're a writer of any kind, you're kind of your whole existence is around that, which is kind of like filling up the well. So I try not to be too hard on myself about like routine, but sometimes I'll do the artist way thing with the morning pages, and that helps me a lot, but I usually don't stick to it for a very long time.
Is the journal writing a way to get songwriting ideas sometime, or are those things separate for you?
I think a lot of it does turn into songs, but a lot of it is just so I don't lose my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's funny because I think my experience has been, at least the songwriters I've interviewed, people who have gone as far back as John Oates from Hall & Oates, Nils Lofgren. And John Oates told me one time that he got a song idea when he was at the Denver airport at a restaurant, and there was a couple next to a meeting, and this woman said some line and immediately said to himself, "That's a song title." And he talked. I mean, I've heard those phrases, "filling the well" and all that stuff. But Elizabeth, it sounds like that happened. You're hypersensitive to your environment, right? And that's where you get a lot of those ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, sometimes it'll just be like a cool word.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be what feels like an inspired thought or kind of breakthrough in realizing something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be a musical tidbit. Or I want to make up a riff to go with this kind of feeling I'm having. So I'll start playing something that sounds like how I'm feeling, and then I can like mash all that together. And they usually
Yeah.
comes together pretty quick.
So are you actively listening to things, what people are saying, or is it more just, you kind of soak it all in regardless?
Yeah, no. Yeah, that I don't have that kind of discipline with it. It's just sort of, and I know this is such like a bummer answer, I feel like, to people trying to figure it out, but it's like it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And I was an only child. I have 10 brothers and sisters that were all halves, and they were a lot older. So I was very isolated. My parents were much older. So I'd had a lot of time to myself and a lot of space to just kind of observe and have thoughts about what was going on around me. I think I've also been very fortunate to collect a lot of inspirational people and things. Everything in my house is a shrine to something. Every decoration on the wall, every curtain, it's like, everything has meaning, and that can actually bog you down, and if I'm like feeling manic or something. And then I have the other side of that, which is like the depression side, where a pink elephant could, step on a litter of puppies and out in front of my house. And I was like, oh, but it's kind of the yin yang of it. But I think that, no, I get pinged. I get kind of a little shot, like a little jolt when I think of certain things.
Yeah.
And then I think that's worthy to elaborate on.
Lydia, how about you? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think I'm more likely to and this isn't like it's not a matter of like waiting around for inspiration to hit, but I think I'm more likely to come up with something when I'm not like slogging through something on guitar, like in my studio trying desperately to find something. It's more when I'm like letting my brain breathe a little bit, because I can be pretty hard on myself. So it's probably more likely I'll come up with something good if I'm not like, I must sit at the piano today and write my masterpiece.
Yeah. So I have a follow up to that, but first, what I'm thinking about is when I interviewed Brian Fallon a couple of weeks ago, he told me, I have to go back to the interview, but his exact words were, "Listen, all of us songwriters, we have all of those notes on our iPhone. You know, they're all filled. Or our iPhones are all filled with notes and things." He goes, "But trust me, no one ever goes back to them. I've got hundreds of those notes on my phone, but I've never once gone back to look and see those." So he said, if any songwriter tells you that, they're lying. So how often do you go back? So I was like, wow, I never thought of that before. So yeah, Lydia,
Yeah.
do you have that stuff on your phone, and do you really go back to them?
I mean, I have a lot of it, and it's mostly I'll see it when I'm like opening my notes to write down that I need to buy cat litter and an avocado or something. So it's usually nothing like that I'm actively like, oh yeah, I better go back to that. And it's usually like something so embarrassing. I mean, I'm sure I've used some of it in some capacity, but yeah, I mean, even less, I would say, do I go back and use like the riffs that I record, because those are usually pretty unbearable.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, what do you think? Do you really go back to those things that are in your phone, those notes?
Well, I actually do, and I can prove it. Because I'm like a hyper organizer, because everything's in so much chaos. So there's both those things going on. So I attempt to organize things. I print my notes out, and I have a file that just says words. And then when I get to
Wow.
the part of like where I put myself under pressure or given myself a deadline for something, or other people have given me a deadline, that's the time that comes out. And it can help when I get stuck. So ideally, I've got my nugget, and I just sit down to work on that, and it all falls out. And sometimes that's exactly what happens. Other times, uh, I might get stuck. I might need something in the second verse, and then I just flip through that words file. And it's because for me, it's just something as simple as a word. I also go back to my voice memos, and when I've sang a melody or something, I will spring a song off those. And I keep files on songs that I want to write, like Marry the Submissing Years, anything that's labor intensive from a detailed standpoint that I need to research. My song Evacuation, I researched voodoo deities. I wanted names of voodoo deities. I wanted to know the name of the oldest cocktail, the oldest French cocktail, which is a Sazerac. So I'll keep a file on a song for years. And I saw Lucinda Williams do that. And so I'm collecting data and information. So I have this crazy file system. In fact, I've got somebody here right now that's helping me organize some piles of papers.
Is there a point when you're working on something when you say, I got to step away from it? Or Elizabeth, we'll start with you since it's,
Yeah, everything. Yeah, when everything I'm coming up with just keeps sucking and it's kind of demoralizing,
yeah,
it's time to put that down and go do something else.
yeah,
Because I'm not gonna, I don't. I like for it to feel magical. I like for it to be payoff after payoff after payoff. And if I'm just getting too much resistance and it's not coming, then I stop. But the key is I keep going back to it over and over and over again. And I'll edit a song down. Even if I've got something sucky, sometimes I'll just write past it and just know every time I sing it down, I gotta comb that part out, and eventually it'll come. There's still
yeah.
2 lines on Aftermath that I didn't quite get there with.
Oh, really?
That I wish that I will sing something different in those places going forward, because the line just wasn't quite right.
So is there a point that you go, yeah, this isn't working? Because it's a balance for me. I feel like maybe I should push through it because I know there's something there, but I know that if it's just not happening, walking away is definitely the better option. So is there a time at which you go, yeah, I just got to put this away? Like, do you know when that happens, or no, you just kind of feel it?
For me,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Like I said, I'm just like lose it, like this. The wind dies down. The wind dies
Ah,
down, I need the muse. That's my partner, and uh, that's just the way that I like to write. It's the most rewarding, and the product of that tends to uh, reach people better. So yeah, I don't not gonna beat myself up. I know that I'll come back to it, but I'm gonna yeah, stop. Just when I get to a point where it's like, I said now wrote something else, another line. That's dumb. and, or I hate the way that sounds, and I'm like, okay, I don't beat myself up about it. I stop where I am and put that file back away, pull out another one, or go do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, Lydia, how about you? When you're getting that rut, are there techniques that you use? And it can be walking away, it can be writing through it, but when you're stuck, I don't want to say writer's block, but when you're in a rut, what techniques do you use to kind of push through that?
I usually just do something totally different. Like, I feel like when I get stuck on a song, it's usually like songwriting in general that I'm just feeling sort of like blah about. And I usually will just start working on probably some grandiose project that I'm never going to finish. And that usually just like frees up space for me. Like I'll write something humorous or just make a little dumb video or something like that. That's kind of how I distract myself from, flogging myself a little too hard on songwriting.
Okay, so I've heard this a lot in the past, maybe 5 or 6 interviews, that a lot of songwriters have told me that they're getting song ideas through activities with repetitive motions. So I interviewed Sadler Vaden, who's Isbell's guitarist, and he told me how many ideas come to him when he's swimming. The repetitive motion of swimming. I've heard gardening a couple of times, the repetitive motion of gardening. I've heard people say walking, running, anything like that. So I'm curious, and Elizabeth, we'll start with you. Does that ever work for you? Anything you do with the repetitive motion that helps you that gives you song ideas?
For sure. Driving is a big one for me, or riding around, letting somebody drive me. Anything that busies the body, is the obvious reason why to me. Busy your body, and then your mind is not in charge of it. Your mind doesn't have to worry about your body, and your mind can roam.
Yeah. So not necessarily something repetitive, just something where your mind doesn't have to think about
I think
what you're
repetitive
doing.
helps because then it's automatic. And if you've got to think about your next move too much, then that's going to occupy your mind and pull your mind out of like you can't trance. I like to, it's really good if you can just like trance out.
Yeah. Yeah. Lydia, how about you?
Yeah. I've been taking a lot of walks is kind of how I've been keeping busy. Normally I would do weightlifting and yoga and stuff, but that just hasn't been really blowing me out of the water lately. So yeah, walking is helpful because it's easy and I don't have to think about it. So yeah, it's a distraction from whatever else I would be doing. And it's filling my time without filling it, you're allowing yourself to be bored as opposed to like focusing really hard on something where you can't really distract yourself from yourself.
But Lydia, do you think the cadence has anything to do with it? Because I've heard that too, like the cadence of the walking or the swimming, that can often
probably
lead to those ideas.
Mm-hmm. Most likely, yeah. Because I'm probably not going to get an idea during yoga because I'm focusing on trying to feel fucking spiritual or something. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to get an idea while I'm trying to soothe my rage or whatever.
So let's talk about the ritual of the process, because I'm fascinated by this. Is there an ideal place where you get your best writing done? And this is kind of a two-parter. So, time of day, certain room, any type of ideal environment. And embedded in that question, because I've realized I can do an entire website devoted just to the pens and pencils that songwriters use. I have never heard a group that is if you do use a pen and paper versus computer. But oh my God, I've heard the loyalty that people have to the color of the paper, the brand, and the ink. I've never heard such passion. So anyway, we'll start with you. So that, but also just the general environment. How important is that to you to get a good songwriting session in?
Mm-hmm. I would say I need a lot of time to myself. I'm probably not going to get in the zone to write if I'm too focused on somebody else, but I guess that's probably what anyone would say. I mean, I am particularly into the Pilot Precise pen. I would say that I pretty much use that exclusively, but I'm not going to be like, I won't even write this song with a big ballpoint or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I find that particular pen a lot more inspiring. I do have a room in my house where I would like to write, but I would say I probably write everywhere but there because I'm probably letting my mind wander a lot more if I'm not in there.
Why is that room? Why do you think that room is such a good place to write?
Oh, just because I have, all my equipment in there. And
Okay.
I mean, I am reluctant to call it a studio because I'm really not a great engineer, but it's where I have all my recording stuff set up.
Color of ink, does that matter to you?
Yeah, I mean, it matters to me for sure. I would much prefer to write with black ink than anything else.
How come?
I don't know. It's just sort of distracting otherwise, I guess.
Okay. Time of day, does that matter?
I mean, it used to matter a lot more. I probably thought I could only write at night or something, but now it really is whenever my brain is in good shape, which is usually the morning if I can drag myself out of bed.
Yeah. Anything you have to have with you, or are you pretty flexible with that?
I'm pretty flexible. Something to drink, I guess, water, wine,
Yeah.
something like that, to tea, something distracting from, the task. I don't know why I need to be distracted from something I'm trying to accomplish, but it helps.
Elizabeth, how about you? How important is that, time of day, place, pen and paper, all that stuff?
Yeah, morning is better. Anytime that it's really quiet is better. I have a little pick-and parlor, kind of a room, kind of sectioned off. I have an old 50s ranch house, so that whole big traditional front living room that those houses usually have,
Oh, yeah.
the formal living room. Well, half that is my closet with like racks and racks and rows of clothes on display, mannequins, and then I have like a room divider that's like a cherry blossom kind of Asian thing. And then I have my pink chair. I really like my hot pink chair and lamps. If I really stop to set it up, then I'll do candles and incense and a little hot toddy with, some Jim Beam and maybe a little smoke, and all that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Isolation's good. I'd keep a guitar on every wall in the house, or every room in the house on a wall with a capo and tuner attached. And then in terms of paper, I have this kind of building process. I've got my file on a song, and then I've got a legal pad. I really like my pink legal pads. Kevin Kinney turned me on to flare pens.
He told me that. I interviewed him. I think he told me that exact thing. Yes.
And so I have multiple colors, and I tend to use those depending on what edit number I'm in. It's a control, I don't know, neurotic, whatever you want to call that. But it's not consistent. But it just gives me forward motion in the process. So I do have those little things. None of them, sometimes when it strikes, it doesn't matter. I wrote Perfect Girls of Pop on my phone, on a drive by myself to Waycross, Georgia, 9-hour drive. And the song was done when I got there. And all I had before was just like a little ditty. So on a voice memo. So in that case, I did not have, the chair and the candle and the whiskey,
right,
and the right pen. So it doesn't have to be, but those are little comforts that it's nice to have a designated space.
Yeah.
And my files, tabletops, weird shrines,
So Lydia, how important is it? I have a famous quote by Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway said he couldn't write about Paris when he was in Paris. He couldn't write about Spain when he was in Spain. He needed distance from that place to write about it. So I'm curious, how important is that to you? Do you need to have distance from an event, from an emotion to write about it? Or is it better to be close to it? Lydia, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say 100%, but I'm much more likely to simmer on something before I try to write about it. So I think distance helps just because, having perspective on something is important.
How much do you revise?
Probably, I mean, it's 50-50. I mean, either I'm working on something constantly, and like I think Elizabeth was saying earlier that, there's still lines that aren't done even after you have recorded a song. But I mean, some things just fall out. So, but I'm pretty heavy on revision. Yeah.
Yeah. Elizabeth, how about you? Do you need that distance? Is distance important to write about a topic, or is being close to it better?
I mean, I think that getting on output too quick in an inspired moment is shooting yourself in the foot. However, if I was like walking down a rainy street in Spain and I smelled muffins or whatever, and it's like I might like jot down whatever I saw or thought, like a couple, an interaction between people, anything I find fascinating. And so I might jot that down real quick, but I'm not going to keep rolling on it usually, because I want to keep taking it in. Sometimes I will. Sometimes I'll if I see something and a cool line comes to me, I'll go ahead and pop out a verse, but that's like under 5 minutes. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing and go back to the hotel and like write this song. Like, no, let's take in some more, let's take in some more. And then, yeah, I've got songs that I've written over a period of 10 years and they are better because of it, because my perspective, like Lydia said, my vantage point got more enriched.
Yeah. So let's talk about the new album then. So Elizabeth, is there a song on the album that just strikes you? What was the easiest song on the album to write? Was there one song that just by far, was the easiest, or maybe the most fun? Maybe those two things are different, but what song was the easiest for you to write?
Well, it was really gratifying to write Stanley by God Terry, because that's a story I've always wanted to tell. It's a true story. And then, Marry the Submissing Years, all of them satisfied something to me. Marry the Submissing Years, because I knew that I was going to attempt the ridiculous task of mirroring a John Prine song that is maybe considered by some sacrilegious, especially if it was coming from a woman. So I really it was very daunting to do that. And I had a file on the song with some stuff about Mary. I had John's lyrics printed out. And so I collected and kind of simmered on the idea for years. And then I was going to the studio on January 3rd to start cutting. It was December 23rd. I had isolated myself the entire month of December. Didn't see anyone. I ate corn dogs on Christmas Day, completely alone. Didn't see a soul. It was awesome. I sat down at the table, got the file out, spread everything out, and just started going down and like juxtaposing what John was saying Jesus was doing. I was juxtaposing what his mother was going through, Mary. So that was challenging and therefore and scary, because I knew I would be hyper judged on it, approaching a John Prine song. So I was like, whew. But when I was done, it took about 6 hours. And when I was done, I cried and cried. It was such a relief. That was the last song I wrote I was done then, with collecting the material. And I had wanted to write that song for a long time, and it was kind of autobiographical in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I was like so relieved and emotional about it.
Well, I was going to ask you what was the hardest song on the album to write, but was that the hardest, or was there one that was just that maybe you wanted to give up on, but you pushed through?
They all felt good.
Oh, that's good.
To tell you the truth, I mean, they're all sort of like some sort of emotional correction for me. Like When She Comes is in direct response to like some blogger dudes on some country music Twitter feed that were like talking about me going to rehab and maybe dying on a hotel room floor. And my family saw that, and it was
Oh,
all
jeez.
super rumors and super overblown. And my mortality was fodder for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it felt good to write that song because I kind of let them know that I'll be coming around the mountain when I come. And
Yeah.
so that, yeah, they all have satisfy something I want to say.
Yeah. Lydia, how about you? I've listened to the new album. I love it. Was there a song on there? So two-part question. The song that was the easiest to write, and also the song, again, that maybe you want to give up on, but you're glad you didn't, but it was really hard to write or finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think all of the songs felt good ultimately to write, but I mean, Dead Rider was pretty easy because I heard it in my head. You know, it was weird because I did some stuff on guitar that I normally wouldn't do. Like I normally wouldn't write like a guitar finger picky riff in the middle of a song, but that sounds like Demented Clowns, but that's what I heard in my head. And I think that song was easier to write because it was very personal about what I was going through in my life, but I sort of used this character of this sort of self-absorbed aging alcoholic writer to get my feelings across, which made it more fun than being like, I'm really sad and I ruined my marriage or whatever. It was a little more fun.
Aging alcoholic writer, you say?
Yeah.
I only got to listen to the first track so far, but I loved it. So I will definitely be digging into that. I'm sure I'll relate.
Is there a song on the album that was just that you wanted to give up on, that was a real struggle?
Yeah, that would definitely be September, which just came out today as a single.
Oh, right.
Because it was so deeply personal and about, you know, my teenage years. So I was pretty far away from it. And I just didn't really think anyone would like it. I thought it was too much of a bummer. And I never really liked writing about my past because, you know, I have a big family and we're all pretty up in each other's shit all the time. And you never want someone to be like, how could you write that song about that, you know? So that one was probably the toughest one to get to its full form.
Did you give up on? I mean, was there hesitation? Like, do I want to write this, or did you?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the oldest song on the record because I've had it for quite a few years and just never really wanted to bring it to the light.
Yeah. All right. Last question. I know we talked about this last time, Lydia, but who are you reading now? You know, who are favorite authors, things you've read, books you'd recommend, things like that.
I've been the worst reader ever during lockdown, which is unfortunate because you'd think I'd be reading like a shit ton. But
Right.
I'm reading My Brilliant Friend right now by Elena Ferrante, and I wanted to read it because I'm starting to study Italian again after a pretty long hiatus, and I really love it because the characters are just so fully formed and real, and the scenery is so real, and it's really great so far.
Do you get song ideas often from things that you read?
Yeah. Yes, particularly on this record, I think, you know, something else I just read which is just so the shit that I love, just like whiny white dudes with substance abuse issues for some reason. But I just read the Patrick Melrose novels and those really fed that side of me.
Okay. All right. Elizabeth, how about you? Do you do a lot of, how often do you read, and does that stuff ever influence the songwriting that you do?
Man, I used to read a lot. I have an incredible collection of books that I treasure and love to display. And I when I went through that really rough period, for some reason, my trauma rewiring that happened, it's very difficult for me to hold a book and maintain focus. So I started doing Audible that's really been great for me. I've got Jim Carrey's memoir is out.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Is it good?
phenomenal. It's so creative and wackadoodle.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it.
Brilliant. Yeah, that for sure. And then Alison Moore's book, Blood.
I
Um,
interviewed her a few years ago, and I've not read that book yet, but I need to read that. Yeah.
I love listening to it on Audible because she reads it, and
Oh,
I've
she
been a
does.
longtime friends with her, and I always knew, the bare minimum of the story that she tells of her family there, but and it was always kind of the elephant in the room. Nobody brought
Yeah.
it up, but it was where you could always feel it, and so really, it just from a personal standpoint gave me the opportunity to know her better and be able to be a better friend to her because I understand more now. But in and of itself, for someone that doesn't know her personally, it's just a fascinating Southern Gothic memoir.
What would you tell someone if the songwriter says to you, yeah, why should I read books? Why not just listen to songs like Elizabeth? What would you tell someone how does reading make you a better songwriter if it does?
Well, I just think consuming words and how words can be structured together and assembled together. Um, Punctuation offers a cadence and can inform phrasing. Again, I am on the just audiobook train for the past several years. So I would say that too, if you feel like you have PTSD or whatever, like focus problems, to actually be able to check out enough to focus on a book, I just recommend getting some earbuds or a Bluetooth speaker or however, and just cranking up a book. Podcasts are great too. It's just informative, fascinating things, and they all feed my thoughts.
Yeah.
So that's where it's kind of like educating your thoughts.
Lydia, how about you? Someone says to you, why should I read? I'm a songwriter. What can books offer me to make me a better songwriter? What would you say?
I mean, I think reading in general, whether it's just to get new information for, songwriting, learning something new is always going to help a writer of any kind. And then just words and how people put things together. It's important to know how other people are doing that.
Yeah.